Hey guys, wanted to do a quick kind of show of a project I've been working on for a couple weeks here. It's not totally done yet, so please be nice if you've got some feedback or critiques. But it's far enough along that I think it's cool to show it off already. See if anybody has any ideas about wrapping it up and making it look cool. So what I'm working on is the USS Defiant in Minecraft. Which is a ship from Star Trek. If you're not familiar with Star Trek, it's probably not going to be that impressive looking. But if you are a Star Trek fan, then hopefully you think this is cool. So what I'm trying to do is build a life-size Defiant. I picked that just because it's a very recognizable ship, and it's also one of the smaller ones, and I've never made any giant things before, so I thought it might be a good thing to kind of try out for the first time. So I am going to show it off in its unfinished state, and I'll provide a download if anybody wants to check it out on their end. I am doing this in Minecraft Bedrock. I think I'm at 1.14.1 is the version on Windows 10. But it should work with any Bedrock version as long as you can load in the map file. But I will show it off. So, this gives you a little bit of a kind of bird's eye view of the silhouette of the ship, which, if you're a Star Trek fan, that's very recognizable. The shape of the Defiant is very unique in Star Trek. We have a couple of maps over here that are going to be used for stuff inside the ship. Where it's at right now is most of the exterior is done, and most of the interior has all the walls in place. But all the kind of decorations and stuff that's supposed to fill the rooms is almost none of that is in. So I will show you where we're at. Obviously, the nacelles and everything on the sides here are not finished. And I know that the red and blue on the back of the nacelles is not correct completely. I'm not done with them. I just wanted the placeholder red and blue in there because it made it easier for me to keep track of what side of the ship I was on while I was building it. So I'm going to go over kind of how I've designed it and what blocks I'm using. This is all in the default texture packs. So if you're wanted to try it out in something else and change up the look. And also, it's completely undecorated essentially right now, so it's just kind of the form that I'm showing you guys. So obviously the silhouette you saw on the map, but here it is in quote-unquote in person. The ship is 91 meters wide, 122 meters long, and 25 meters tall at the widest spots. So I started out with the overall silhouette and making sure that that was correct and as true to the screen, what you see on screen as possible. And then kind of had to make everything sort of fit to that. So because it's Minecraft, each block is a meter square or a meter cube. It doesn't fit 100% exact on the inside, so a couple rooms and such had to be reshaped or a little bit squished in places to make it all fit correctly, because it was more important to me to keep the exterior dimensions pretty true to what you see on screen rather than the interior. So some of the interior is a little bit off, so that I could keep the exterior closer to what it's supposed to be. So I started out on deck. There's 5 decks on the Defiant. I started out with deck 3, which is basically right in the middle here, because that is the only deck that covers the entire top-down silhouette of the ship. So I started off with that deck and made everything fit correctly, or as correctly as you could within that deck. And then when I built the other decks above and below that, I kind of used that as my guidepost to make things kind of relative to one another correctly. So the exterior of it is all done in clay because it looks vaguely like metal, but without being just a flat color. I tried it out with concrete first, and I didn't really like it because it was just very kind of plain. Maybe I'll change it if somebody has some good ideas about that, but for now it is clay. I definitely didn't like the way iron looked because iron's got like a border on it on the regular texture pack, and so it ended up looking just like a whole bunch of squares, whereas with the clay it's kind of that grayish color but not so blocky looking when you see it kind of on a big area. Which maybe it's ironic for Minecraft not wanting it to look overly blocky, but I thought it worked out good. So I'll go to the only room that has a little bit of stuff content is the bridge, because like I said, stuff had to get kind of squished to make everything fit correctly, and one room that I really couldn't squish was the bridge. It's got to look like the bridge. So this is kind of on the top deck where the bridge is. I actually ended up making the bridge first and then building deck 1 around the bridge. But all the other decks are built relative to deck 3, which was kind of the original deck. So this is the bridge. It's pretty close. I couldn't make it absolutely huge. It probably should be a little bit bigger, but I had to keep it within reason to, fit the exterior of the ship. So it's pretty close to what it ought to be. It's definitely recognizable as the Defiant bridge. We've got the view screen up here with some stars on display. This is actually just one map that I've placed a few times and rotated. So that's what that looks like. And then we have consoles here. So I wanted to make an LCARS display to have on the consoles, especially on the bridge. And so I've never made a map to be used as a thing like this in either of these. So this was my first time trying to make something, and I think it ended up looking pretty cool. I know it's a little cluttered. I might change it before it's done, and I'm definitely going to have multiple other ones available. So right now they're all just that one. That's the only one I've made. But I will probably be making a couple others so that there's a little bit of variation on these important consoles, and probably in a couple other consoles in the ship, like in engineering and whatnot. So there's kind of some placeholder furniture in here. Don't know if these are what's going to stay. I know I'll have other console stuff put in, so it's going to look different when it's finished. And aside from this little bit of bridge area, the interior is basically completely undecorated, except for having the floors and ceilings in. The only other things that are in is all the rooms that are quarters have beds in them, so those are in place because keeping track of what room was which was a lot easier after throwing the beds in. So those are good kind of landmarks on each deck. And then this would be the captain's office, which is the only other room I put some placeholder furniture in. So let's go over the design of the interior. There's going to be stuff on the walls. These are not going to just stay as plain clay walls. I'm probably going to end up doing map displays that resemble kind of the hallway design a little bit better. So that's going to be across the hallway. Everything is lit by sea lanterns underneath. So the floor is got this gray carpet on, and there's sea lanterns under that which shine through. And if we go into, let me see, I don't know my way around the ship yet, And in a couple areas, there are not doors yet because I haven't decorated everything yet. So there's going to be, there's a lot of finishing touches and a lot of refining to be done, especially on the interior. But we'll just break through here real quick. So you can see pretty clearly right here, because the sea lanterns from the floor above you exist there, I've got quartz slabs up above. So those will be, this is how the final floors will look, as far as there'll be stuff on the walls, but it's going to be this gray carpet and quartz slab ceiling. So that's what the hallways end up looking like. And I'm pretty happy with that. It's not perfect, but oddly enough, that's how tall the decks are supposed to be. So, as far as keeping it true to the real show, that's how tall they are. And so there's this, for example, and on the other side, these are where turbo lifts and stuff would go to get to different decks. So a lot of this, the majority of this is laid out. This room is where a shuttle pod normally sits, so this will get filled in and kind of decorated correctly. But a lot of stuff here is just the overall layout is kind of in place. Almost nothing's decorated. Nothing's readily identifiable really, except having beds in some of these rooms. So it's all going to get filled in. If anybody's got ideas, there's a lot of temporary stuff. When I was building stuff, I threw jack-o'-lanterns down to light it up at first because they shine a good light, and it would be obvious that they aren't supposed to stay there later when I'm going through and so I thought that was useful. But yeah, so this is what I've got. I'm pretty happy with how it's going so far. Again, the exterior is mostly done at this point, and we're going to be going over the next couple of weeks to finish up all the interior stuff and decorating. A little bit of stuff left to do on the exterior hull, as far as like kind of shaping everything into one another correctly, so it all kind of contours the way it's supposed to. But if you're, oh, that's not finished. So where the floor is, I've gone through and replacing that on the exterior wall so that it's not showing through. That'll all get finished. These nacelles will get fixed. A majority of the contouring outside is done, so that the decks kind of, when I first built them, they were all just blocked off decks, but kind of blending them into each other the way they're supposed to go. So that's coming along, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. There's a lot of stuff to get done, and the interior is going to take, I think, not nearly as long as the exterior took. I've been working on this for a couple of weeks. I figure, a couple hours at a time, a couple nights a week for 2 or 3 weeks now. So no small investment, and plenty more to do. Down here, my son wanted to try to help too, so he wanted to make a shuttlecraft to go with it. So he and I made a pair of shuttlecrafts. This is the one I threw together, which is a little bit truer to what you see on screen. And then he built this really cool looking, almost like a Firefly meets shuttlecraft ship. It's pretty cool, actually. So those are the shuttles that accompany the Defiant. So if anybody's got feedback or advice or ideas or anything, I know it's incomplete, but I would welcome any feedback, because this is the first time I've ever tried making anything really large. And I've made it entirely in, I am in creative mode obviously, but I've made it block by block by hand. No cheats or mods or special, command downloads or anything like that. So, yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how it's going, If you've got advice, please leave comments. There's going to be a link in the description if you want to download it, as well as download the source blueprints I found online that I'm using as my guide for this. If you're familiar with Star Trek, you know that there's several different versions of blueprints for most of the ships because they're not 100% consistent in the series and on screen. So I had to pick one and just go with it, and I'll leave that in with the download as well, so if you want to check that out. So at this point, if you want to be able to decorate your own interior and everything, it's kind of at the point where it's worth someone else downloading if you want to be able to make the rest of it, the inside, your own. And I will do an update in a couple weeks when the rest of it's finished. So enjoy. Bye.